Hello and welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. This one into Jupiter going into direct motion on the 23rd of November 2022. Now, what I want to do is explore what that means, and I will do so, but also I want to give you the big picture about Jupiter's role over the last couple of years, because its journeying has been rather unusual. If you recall, in 2021, it was in the sign of Aquarius, but also went through the sign of Pisces from the 14th of May through to the 29th of July, and then returned to the sign of Pisces on the 29th of December. Now this year, Jupiter has been splitting its affections between the sign of Pisces but also Aries. So over the last couple of years, it's not been sticking to its usual orbit of pretty well 1 year for one sign. So Jupiter generally takes about 12 years to go through its entire cycle. So this is a really important event. And of course, when a retrograde occurs, it's not just the retrograde we need to take into. We also need to be conscious of the pre-shadow period before the retrograde begins. And this one was on the 4th of May. But at that point, Jupiter was in the sign of Aries. And Jupiter's retrograde began on the 28th of July in the sign of Aries. But then it reversed into the sign of Pisces on the 28th of October. So this process of Jupiter emerging that occurs on the 23rd of November is really exciting. And then we have a window of opportunity through to the 20th of December, when Aries plays host once more to Jupiter, and Jupiter moves back into Aries before moving on the 16th of May 2023 into the Earth sign of Taurus, and it's going to resume its usual orbit. So a lot of information to share with you. It's really exciting stuff. Jupiter rules the sign of Pisces, which makes it even more significant. But what is the relationship Jupiter is having with other planets? It's in a square with Mars, which can promote quite a lot of enthusiasm, sometimes overconfidence, but it's also in a magnificent sextile with Pluto, really significant. But as this event occurs, it's also squaring up with the Sun and the Moon in the other sign that Jupiter governs, of Sagittarius. So there's so much to pick through to share with you. And what I'm going to do is share the simple birth chart wheel so we can all relate to this event collectively. I'm then going to share the event chart wheel using equal house this time to try and make it a little clearer, a little easier to understand. But then please stay with me. I will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs which you can relate to in terms of your sun or your ascendant, to give you a forecast of what this event means and what Jupiter being in the sign of Pisces means for the next month, but also what your prospects are with Jupiter moving into Aries through till the 16th of May next year, when it goes into Taurus. So lots to tell you about. If you would like to get your year 2023 personal horoscope forecast, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can produce that forecast for you. It's totally unique to you. It goes way beyond your sun sign. And also, in my special package, which has got 30% off, you can also get your life roadmap, your character analysis, which can help you to understand some of the repetitive patterns in your life, some of the more challenging ones, but also help you to seize the opportunities that your natal chart can give you by a much greater understanding of all its characterizations. Please see the link beneath this video. If you're new to my channel, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe. If you're an ongoing viewer, thank you so much for all your views. But if you wish to subscribe, please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. So an exciting event on November the 23rd, and of course it comes later in the day when we have the Sagittarius new moon. So the event chart does reflect that event in quite a powerful way. But what does Jupiter in Pisces mean? Well, the sign of Pisces is the 12th zodiac sign, and therefore it's the last of the 12 zodiac signs. And the other co-ruler of this sign, or co-regent, is Neptune. And the two planets are close enough together to be known as conjunct. Now that has a potential spiritual dimension, and in fact, on the 12th of April earlier in 2022, they were exactly conjunct. Now, this gives us an opportunity to reach a higher frequency in the way we lead our lives, to go beyond the purely mundane, practical and tangible, to try to understand things in a more spiritual, psychological sense. So anything to do with healing, to do with nurture, to do with reflection, to do with nature, obviously to do with the seas. Jupiter can be about international borders in its rulership of the other sign it governs, of Sagittarius. So I feel that Jupiter going direct in this area is going to be a lot about international affairs, but the location of Neptune, which sadly is still in a retrograde, so close to Jupiter, suggests that there could be some kind of push to achieve a more pragmatic and perhaps more peaceful outcome in some of the conflicts that have been going on in the world. Will that be successful? I don't believe it will. And part of the reason for that is Mars. So Mars is in the third solar house of Gemini, and it is squaring up with Jupiter. So that's very much a pile it high, sell it cheap type of influence. It's very over enthusiastic, and it can give us a lot of get-go and confidence, but it also can see us over egging the pudding. But the problem is that Mars in retrograde in house 3 is very much about everyday information, short bursts of communication, short journeys. So Jupiter being in a right angle suggests that we should be realistic, not over confident of what the outcome can be. And Mars is in a more exact square with Neptune, which is creating a lot of cloudy information, distortion, and that obviously makes the sharing information generally very agenda driven and not necessarily guided by the principle of truth. So we can't be too idealistic just because Jupiter's direct in Pisces and in a conjunction with Neptune. But if you are someone who's wanting to embrace healing in any way at all, this can be an exciting opportunity. But depending on where Jupiter is in terms of your sun sign or your ascendant, that can offer some benevolence, some positivity. Jupiter is about expansion. Now also, of course, we have that gathering of energy in the sign of Sagittarius. And because the sun and the moon are so right at the start of Sagittarius, they forge a dissociate square with Jupiter. Once more, just like Jupiter's square with Mars and Neptune's square with Mars, there's the potential for things to be amplified, but not necessarily in a positive way, because the collective, including a conjunction between Venus and Mercury in Sagittarius, is very much about being more outgoing, more bubbly, more effervescent, potentially much more optimistic and self-confident. One thing that could come from this event is a kind of belief that things will get better, which is not a bad thing, but perhaps a degree of exaggeration. So very, very important, I feel, to stay grounded and rooted in reality. But Pluto can be such an ace in this regard, because Earth carries water, if we think about the bed of a river, and because Jupiter and Neptune are forging a very helpful sextile to Pluto, Pluto's transformational energies in a very constructive and positive way can carry the emotion of the sign of Pisces very constructively. So that's an enormously helpful aspect. I have to say, Jupiter-Pluto is the potential for things to evolve in a very dynamic way, but in a way which is very transformational. So there is real hope there with that particular alliance. Now, in terms of the simple birth chart wheel, which I'm sharing on the screen now, you can see that the Sun in Sagittarius, along with the Moon, is in house 9. So very much to do with higher knowledge, international affairs, can be to do with an optimism, and the more lucky energy of Jupiter, which comes through the sign of Sagittarius. But because there is that square, I feel that whatever's going on, there is going to be that sense of amplification, exaggeration. So we need to brace ourselves for that. Now, of course, we do have Saturn in Aquarius still in that crunching right angle with Uranus, but that is going to stretch out and lessen from the 3rd of December. So not very far away, just about 10 days. But for now, still that constraint over the collective situation that we're all experiencing in terms of energy costs, the cost of borrowing, interest rates going up, inflation generally. That's not so good, and also a great deal of potential industrial unrest, because Uranus is about the truth, and the truth for people in the second house of Taurus is they want to speak out about where they feel there's injustices in terms of their terms and conditions. So it's not always just about money, it's about feeling recognised and respected and appreciated. So very Aquarius energy, because it's very much about being inclusive. But the Taurus energy is very much about being rebellious about the actual facts of whatever deal people have. Now, Venus and Mercury are in a glorious conjunction in Sagittarius in the 9th house, and for some lucky people that may be an opportunity to break out and do something that's more diverse, spontaneous, travel, take in culture, learn a new skill, foreign languages, all those things. Even sociability can be hugely blessed, particularly with all the restriction we've had in terms of our freedom of movement over the last few years. So Venus and Mercury together in Sagittarius, despite Mercury's technical debilitation there, I think is a real good one. But on the screen now I'm sharing the event chart wheel, but based on equal house, and the key here is that Jupiter and Neptune are in house 7, so that's given us a desire to relate in a much more harmonious way. But you can see Mars, which is very much to do with finding a voice. It can be to do with being quite powerfully dominating, to be honest, in house 10 is in the sign of Gemini. But we can see that there have been some Gemini figures that haven't necessarily been getting things all their own way since Mars has been going retrograde. So Boris Johnson lost his job as British Prime Minister, and Donald Trump, whether you're a fan, an advocate or not, hasn't had the success with some of his MAGA candidates in the midterms as he may have expected. Another Gemini. But Mars in Gemini is very much about the expression of ideas, but in the 10th house can be quite dominating. So I feel the square with Jupiter and Neptune is pushing back on Mars's power in that regard. Now Mars, of course, is in that quincunx with Pluto, which in itself is very challenging, particularly around military situations, and it does point towards the potential for the overuse of force. But I think really what Jupiter and Neptune are saying in this event chart, based on equal houses, look, if we can try to find ways to celebrate the things we have in common rather than focusing all the time on the things that make us different. Now, we do have the position of Pluto in house 5, which is very much about expressing our creativity and wanting to be playful and have fun. But of course Pluto in Capricorn hasn't really been a bunch of laughs since 2008. It's really been setting an agenda which is very much about ruthlessness in terms of protecting old autocracies, old organisations, old power. But it does forge that really enterprising link with Jupiter in house 7. So there's still a lot to be gained by trying to work with one another. Jupiter, in some ways, is about believing, having hope, having faith, particularly in the sign of Pisces. So Pluto's respecting that process. Mars is much more destructive to that process. Now, in terms of this event chart, you can see that Saturn is also in house 6, very much about health, responsibilities and obligations. Uranus in house 9 is about freedom at all costs, and a very Sagittarius energy. So that's still creating a degree of friction between where we contribute and where we want to get something back. So the balance between freedom and responsibility. But you can see that the Sun, Venus and Mercury are all in house 4, which is very much to do with nurture, protection, defense, security, the home. So I think what everybody is conscious of is protecting their home, their family, feeling a sense of security. We want that sense of security. But unfortunately, because of the square with Jupiter, we may still be experiencing things that seem extreme, whether it's weather systems, particularly to do with rains and storms, with Jupiter and Neptune being in Pisces, but squaring up with Mars, which of course can be destructive in its energy. We can see also destructiveness around communication systems or even distribution systems. So I think this event, particularly through to when Jupiter moves into Aries on the 20th of December, is saying to us all to really savour security, try to celebrate where we can find those points of mutual interest, try to be as peaceful and constructive in expressing our viewpoints as possible, and try to embrace the more spiritual dimension of the sign of Pisces. But I will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs so to outline what you can expect over the next 4 weeks in the sign of Pisces. But I'm also going to outline what you can expect once Jupiter moves into Aries from the 20th. So please stay with me for that. So Aries, through to the 20th of December, I think the big thing for you is to embrace that part of your nature which is more reflective. It is about understanding the deeper machinations of how you feel things. The spiritual dimension of your situation is definitely going to be strengthened, but it also could be challenged because your ruler Mars is in retrograde and in a very decisive but divisive right angle with Neptune and also with Jupiter. You know, people could challenge you a little bit. It could be within your family, particularly a sibling or even somebody in your community who sees things very differently to you. But stand in your power, Aries, because once Jupiter moves into your sign on the 20th of December, you have a window of opportunity which goes on through to the 16th of May to really initiate some kind of new scheme or inject an ongoing strand with much greater enthusiasm, verve and drive. And it really can be rock and roll. It can be really fun for you. But I feel that you're just going through a period where just understanding some deeper strands in your situation could make you feel like things are rather paused. But of course, with your ruler Mars being compromised by Neptune, physical vitality probably isn't that strong. And also because Mars is conflicted by Pluto in your sector of work, obligation and responsibility, your goals and ambitions may seem to be a little bit stalled because maybe you don't quite have enough fire around your situation to really get on the front foot. Now that may seem a surprising thing to say, just as the Sun, the Moon, Venus and Mercury have all started to show such a great impact in your sister fire sign of Sagittarius. So there can be some expansion, but I feel that you just need to kind of live in that energy, but also be more aware of the shadow side of things. So where things are not necessarily discussed openly, or some of your fears and anxieties, they could be hovering around a little bit, but you're really going to go on the front foot as you burst into the start of December, with Mars and Neptune ending their square and Neptune going direct on the 4th. And also for Uranus and Saturn, that's been a really attritional right angle for us all. That clears at the start of December. So by the time Jupiter returns to your sign on the 20th, the timing could not be more impeccable. And in fact, on Christmas Day, Jupiter is going to be forging a gorgeous link with the moon in the sign of Aquarius, and you could end up having a really jolly Christmas time. Whatever your circumstances, it may turn out a lot better than you may have previously thought it could be. Now, Taurus, for you, having Jupiter in your 11th house is wonderful for anything to do with the collective, but also your long-term hopes. But your long-term hopes are being, in some ways, tempered by Mars slowing down in your 2nd house, particularly if those long-term hopes are of a materially orientated. So anything to do with planning for the future, perhaps your New Year's resolutions or a business strategy for 2023, might not go quite at the speed of light, but the collective of energy in Sagittarius is very much to do with understanding the deeper side of your planning. So whether it's to do with loans, investments, grants, perhaps some funding, could even be shares if you're planning something that's more ambitious. And that stuff may require you to network and link into others. And your ability to do so is definitely enhanced by Jupiter going direct in your 11th house. What's not to like? Also, Saturn and Uranus, which have particularly affected fixed signs, and therefore you, over the last couple of years, that starts to unravel at the start of December, which is also really exciting. Also, Mars and Neptune, that's going to unravel at the start of December as well. But I think once Jupiter moves into the sign of Aries on the 20th of December, through to when it joins you on the 16th of May, you go through a period where your psychological knowledge and also your love of peace and tranquility can really take on a life force of its own. But it may seem in some ways, through to then, despite the sensational influences of the solar return at the turn of the year for your sign, which is very much about expansion, but I think the expansion needs to be conscious of also your vulnerabilities and where you may not feel quite so strong. But don't see that as a weakness, because it's not. It's about being realistic. You see, the thing with Jupiter is it can trick us into thinking anything's possible. And with Jupiter so close to Neptune, for example, you could forge alliances over the next month, which seem to be really exciting. But actually what you're really needing is alliances with depth. So those are the things to look out for through this process of Jupiter going through your 11th house, which can be good for friendships, can definitely be good for the run up to Christmas in terms of mixing and mingling. But then Jupiter is really asking you to embrace the more philosophical side of your nature, the deeper side of your need. If there's any healing that you want to embrace, you have a glorious opportunity in the first 5.5 months of 2023. Now, Gemini, for you, Jupiter going direct in your 10th house can be really positive for your career. But there are some more tempering influences that we still need to be conscious of. Jupiter going direct on its own doesn't inform us of the whole picture. So some astrologers are going to be saying, to be honest, Jupiter direct in Pisces can give you a sensational opportunity over the next 4 weeks through to the 20th of December. They're right in a way, but what about the fact that Neptune's quite close? That can make Jupiter very sensitive. Not a bad thing at all, but if we're wanting to be dynamic around goals and ambitions, sometimes we can't necessarily be too floaty about it. We have to have very clear objectives. Now Mars, of course, in your own sign is still in retrograde and will be through to the 12th of January. So that's not a great help because it's in that square with Neptune, so closely located to Jupiter. So what I would say is, when it comes to your ambitions, Jupiter can definitely help you as long as you're setting achievable targets and you're going about things in a very disciplined way. Now, because there is this gathering of energy in the sign of Sagittarius, the more you can work skillfully with others, the more you will make Jupiter work for you professionally to your greatest advantage. So Mars in your sign is asking you in its retrograde in a way to not harvest your own personal individual desires to the exclusion of what's needed collectively. If you can see how you can help others but also gain from that, you're on a winner. And really the clue is in the fact that your ruler Mercury is so closely allied to Venus in your opposite sign. So your diplomacy, charm and people skills are really given an opportunity to shine over the next few weeks, but you have to seize that opportunity. If some of your ideas or plans are a bit muddled or not really worked out, they will be picked apart by someone in a position of influence. But certainly having a lovely way of working with others, which is very inclusive, acknowledging of other people's role in terms of your situation, as well as expressing what you give to that situation, will be a great way to make progress with Jupiter in Pisces. But what about when it moves into Aries on the 20th of December, where you have a glorious window there that goes on through to mid-May? And of course, for you, Jupiter in Aries is very much about the collective. It's about your friendships, it's about your network. But Aries is a very motivating sign for Jupiter because it's fiery. So I feel that you're setting the stage in the next month, but then you can really push through your hopes in the following 5.5, 6 months in a really dynamic way. So I think it's really super exciting for you, Gemini. Now that brings us to Cancer. Now Cancer for you, obviously Jupiter going direct in the 9th house gives it a kind of Sagittarius flavour, because the 9th house is about expansion, optimism, travel, courage, independence, freedom, whereas the energy of Jupiter is more to do with that spiritual dimension. Put the two together, if you find yourself over the next 4 weeks going on some kind of journey, it could literally, I don't mean metaphorically, if you're physically traveling and you go on a retreat or you go to some kind of health environment, you go to a spa day, you go for some time by the sea, all of that can be incredibly healing for you, Cancer, and also very exciting. What's not to like? Well, it's just that Mars continues to play havoc potentially in your 12th house, so its square with Jupiter but also Neptune can arouse any part of the deeper part of your psyche which is not feeling 100% strong and amplify the problem. So some truths could get expressed to you. It could come from other people, it could come from your own reading, learning and studying, that you inform yourself in a much deeper way about some ways of going about things, some philosophies or practices or health techniques that can be very good to feed your inner person. But the gathering of energy in the sign of Sagittarius is all about the physical world. It's about your practical reality, and it's all about making sure that you're keeping things in balance. The 6th house very much about virtue. Quite hard to be virtuous with Sagittarius energy because it's very much about giving it large. So with Venus and Mercury together, there could be an invitation to, say, a work celebration for the festivities, and it may be very hard to maintain that level of self-discipline when it comes to enjoying all the fine fare that could be on offer. So I think for everybody, this particular event can as I said before, can see the potential to overdo things, and that is there for you as well, I feel. But if you can do something that helps you to expand, to break out, to be more dynamic, it really will potentially be quite a magical journey. But then you have Jupiter parked up in your sector of success, the 10th house, right through till mid-May 2023. It's also going to be augmented by 2 new moons. The first one on the spring equinox, which occurs on the 21st of March. The second on the 21st of April. But that's going to be an eclipse. And that eclipse is also going to square up with Pluto, but it will be conjunct Jupiter. So if you really want to do the research, get informed, you're preparing a part of the year, the following 6 months. If you really want to raise your profile, go for a more ambitious thrust as you make your way into 2023. Well, Jupiter really lights that up, not just by going into the sign of Aries. It's giving you an opportunity, and it's great link with Pluto through the next month, through to the 20th of December. But then beyond that, because it's involved in that sensational solar eclipse on the 21st of April, despite Pluto's right angle, then that could just elevate you up in a way which could be quite sensational if you show the desire, and it is about desire. Which brings us to Leo. So for you, Jupiter being in the 8th house, going direct, could trigger some surprise financial good fortune. Not necessarily something that's being talked about with a great deal of confidence at the moment, because everything seems to be going up. But for you, this could work out. But of course, Mars is key because it's forging that exaggerating go-getting energy with Jupiter, but that very dissolving and confusing energy with Neptune. So Neptune can cause mischief around resources, whereas Jupiter can provide opportunities. But the secret is Mars, because Mars for you is in the part of your horoscope to do with your connections to others, but also your future planning. So I think realism is really, really important, particularly as you've got that gathering of energy in the sign of Sagittarius, which works brilliantly for you because it's a fire sign, shares your fire triplicity, because that's pushing you to be more daring. But this particular event could see you push a bit too hard, a bit too quick. So important to have faith in the process, and particularly with your own self and your own qualities and skills. From the start of December, things will get easier. But once Jupiter moves into Aries on the 20th, that's pushing you right through to the middle of May next year to shake things up in a major, major way. Whether it's about expanding your knowledge, about traveling more, about being more open to different cultures, about really giving yourself an opportunity to revitalize your life with fresh stimulation. You're a fire sign, and of course you're ruled by the sun and can be the most charismatic member of the zodiac, but you're also a fixed sign. And this means that you have a tendency to stick with what you know. Leo people can have a tremendous adherence to a pattern of life that makes them feel comfortable, but that can steal your passion. And I think Jupiter from the 20th of December gives you an opportunity to really go for it in a very full-hearted and full throttle way, which really could be exhilarating in the first 5.5, 6 months of the new year. Now for you, Virgo, Jupiter has gone direct in your sector of relating. Now if there has been some muddles, particularly around work-based or career-based relationships, Jupiter can surely help. But it's also asking you to stay real, and because the gathering of energy in Sagittarius is very tender, the 4th house, and on the event chart it occurs just at 55 minutes into the sign of Virgo. You do have the path of fortune on that ascendant, which is good, but I would say that for the next month there are relationship opportunities, but you need to balance how this will work for you in terms of your emotional needs, home life and family, and also your professional situation, because they're going to be demanding quite a lot of your attention. And I don't think you can focus on your relationship situation in isolation, but certainly if there's someone who really excites you, the link between Jupiter and Pluto in your sector of self-expression could bring someone into your world, if you're single, who really does have a gravitating and very intense energy that you find really hard to resist. But of course, if you're in a committed relationship, Jupiter in your 7th house is asking you to show faith in that relationship, even if it's not perfect, because you're someone with a real appreciation of the detail of things. Sometimes that can see you focusing on what really doesn't work for you to the exclusion of the big picture. Because Jupiter is very much about the big picture, particularly in its rulership of Sagittarius, and because of this tender gathering of energy, including your ruler Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius on this event, staying sensitive around all sorts of relationships really is crucial. But once Jupiter moves on the 20th of December into Aries, it's activating your business sector and will do so right through to the middle of May. Is there something that you would like to go for as you come into the new year? Would you like to show a lot more entrepreneurship in your approach to life? Would you like to take the assets you've got and to make them stronger by being more enterprising? Because Jupiter is the planet of enterprise. So a great opportunity for you once Jupiter moves into Aries. Which brings us to Libra. Now, for you, Jupiter going direct in the 6th house is good for your health. But if you have been feeling particularly drained, it really wouldn't be a surprise, because Mars is in your sector of where you want to be more progressive and outgoing and daring, but it's in retrograde, and it's being drained by the watery energy of Neptune in your 6th house, all to do with your commitments and obligations. So even if you wanted to break out, it may seem that you don't quite have the wherewithal in terms of your vitality to do it. The collective in the 3rd house in Sagittarius is very much giving you an opportunity, because it includes your ruler Venus, to demonstrate your enormous ability to communicate with great élan and great charm and great aplomb. So you can use those sparkling skills to try to just fence up, protecting yourself around where you may feel a bit stretched out, or other people take your goodwill, Jupiter in the 6th house, for granted. But once Jupiter moves into Aries on the 20th of December, wow, a fantastic window right through to the middle of May, Libra, which could be really significant for all sorts of relationships for you. Very exciting indeed. So Scorpio, Jupiter going direct in the sign of Pisces is really exciting for your love life. Could also be exciting for your creativity, flair. Anything where you can bring a sense of drama to bear is really going to be blessed from now through to the 20th of December. What's not to like? Well, it's just that your 2 ruling planets are in mortal conflict at the moment. Pluto is in the part of your scope to do with your ideas and values and everyday communications, your relationships with siblings and neighbours, but in a real tense quincunx with Mars, your traditional ruler, which is in the 8th house, which is very much in keeping with the core energies of your sign: deep, mesmeric, psychological, transformational, but it's in retrograde, and of course it's being compromised by the dreamy, drifty and rather wet energy of Neptune in your 5th house, just like Jupiter. So yes, there are opportunities to play and perhaps be more go-getting, but you have to be conscious of that relationship between your 2 rulers not being very joined up and not being very cohesive. But also, Pluto does forge a fantastic link with Jupiter. So if there is something that you feel very strongly about, that you have got a message or a skill or a service that you want to reach other people with, your passion, persuasion and enthusiasm can still really tick the box in a big way. And because there is that collective in the sign of Sagittarius, including Venus, do you know, some money can come to you, and it could come to you where you show the confidence to just go beyond your immediate comfort zone. But I'm not talking about, you know, buying digital currencies, which have obviously crashed recently, or getting involved in a get-rich-quick scheme, or getting caught up in a business venture that's written on the back of a beer mat in the pub with a friend that's not really thought through. I'm talking about something that could be a playful payback to you. So, you know, it could be where you get together in a bit of a syndicate with colleagues at work and all have a little bit of a flutter. There could be a payout. And also, if you want to do something that's a bit more dynamic in terms of your talents, then as long as you don't overdo it, because that's what this event is really saying to me, it has huge opportunities, but we mustn't, you know, get too caught up in the publicity of it. And I think, as I've mentioned before, there could be some folks who just focus on Jupiter going direct. You can't do that. You've got to see the big picture, and then we can thread it all together, and I can give you much more serious and much more grounded advice. But that brings us to when Jupiter moves into the sign of Aries. Well, the great news for you, I think that's going to be good for your physical vitality right through to the middle of May. When we go into the new year, there's a load of energy in the sign of Capricorn in terms of the solar return. So you're going to be very busy going into 2023. Lots of writing, lots of text messages and emails, pinging backwards and forwards. Going to be really dynamic. And I think having that extra energy that Jupiter will gift you from the 20th of December will be really good. So it will help you to perhaps take your diet, your fitness regime, what you drink much more seriously. And it's all about marginal gains. It's not about doing really colossal things. It's about where we can make some refinements. And, you know, 5 refinements of 5% different leads to a 25% difference overall. So think in those terms, but Jupiter can help you to perhaps find the job that gives you much greater satisfaction. Help other people, because the 6th house is very much about providing services. That gives you a bit of a clue. And as you go into the new year, another little clue to you, if you haven't watched your year 2023 forecast by me yet, is the midpoint between the sun and the moon is in your 2nd house. So resources and money are going to be something that you can be really on the gas next year around. And Jupiter's going to help you to be enterprising, but also give you the pointers where you perhaps need to be more virtuous and aware of looking after yourself with self-care. Which brings us to Sagittarius. Now, of course, Jupiter is your ruler, so really exciting for you. But Jupiter going direct is in your 4th house. Let's put it this way. Since 2012, if your home emotional, psychological world has felt very deep and sensitive, but at times very confused, where you live, how you live there, with whom, if there's been huge disappointments around your family, maybe there's been some wonderful opportunities, maybe you ended up living in a place that really set your heart's desires alive. That's all possible. That's the upside of Neptune. But Neptune has some real challenging energy, and of course at the moment it's conflicting Mars in your sector of relating. So if you're trying to assert yourself, it may see you inadvertently give some mixed messages. So Jupiter going direct in the 4th house can strengthen up some of that confusion that Neptune may have imposed on your situation. But it could also see you setting something in motion over the next month, which could be about expanding your home, expanding your family, improving where you're living, be more enterprising about the use of space in your home. Maybe some kind of philosophy can come into your world, Jupiter philosophy, that's to do with finding a greater sense of emotional peace and tranquility. Any kind of activity in an area where there's lots of water and peaceful nature will also appeal to you. But of course you do have that gathering of energy and that incredibly charismatic link between Venus and Mercury in your sign. So you're going to want to really take a firmer grip on your life direction over the next few weeks. This is a time for you to absolutely dazzle people with what makes you unique and different and vibrant and effervescent. So Jupiter's just saying, look, just always be conscious of how things feel, the fourth house, and your sense of security and being protective. So don't get so caught up in charging into situations with your innate enthusiasm. Remember, I have Mars in Sagittarius. That innate enthusiasm is absolutely incredible. Just needs to be tempered for us all, because Jupiter is conflicted by the Sun and the Moon, but also Mars. So just be conscious of that. But with Jupiter forging a lovely angle to Pluto, the next 4 weeks could see some kind of breakthrough around a financial matter that's linked to a property or your family. Now, once Jupiter moves into your sister fire sign of Aries, well, the sky really is the limit, because right through to the middle of June, you're going to really demonstrate to people a lot of creativity, flair, passion, liveliness and joy as you go through the first 6 months of the new year. So Capricorn, Jupiter going direct in your third house is great for everyday communications. On the face of it, absolutely glittering, because the third house is where things move quickly. It's very Gemini-like, and Jupiter obviously very much about enthusiasm through its rulership of Sagittarius. But here, this can be your embracing of the Christmas run-up, the traditional elements of Christmas in terms of helping those in your community or getting together with people for joyful celebrations, whether it's carols or enjoying a gathering or two. And because Pluto in your sign is in such a great link with Jupiter, very fortifying. What's not to like? Well, of course, Mars continues in retrograde in house 6, which could be affecting your physical vitality. And with Neptune in a square with Mars, actually some of those conversations, particularly recently from the start of October, or the energy immediately around you, whether it's the vibe of particular neighbours or just the environment that you're in daily, that may have actually proved to be a bit draining. Maybe it's just all that's going on in the world. And of course, your ruler Saturn continues to be compromised by the electric but erratic energies of Uranus. And so things haven't been easy with Saturn in your second house, particularly in that square the last couple of years. But that's pulling apart from the start of December. And Neptune and Mars also, that will pull apart from the start of December. So I think you're going to see, despite the fact there is this gathering of energy in your 12th house, it's very much to do with trust, sincerity, insincerity, understanding some of past relationships that have made way in your life, the loss of loved ones. There is going to be some reflection going on. I don't feel that Jupiter going direct in your third house is going to be a one-dimensional event, which is all happy-go-lucky and joyful, which of course Jupiter can be quite a happy-go-lucky jovial influence for its rulership of Sagittarius, because you've got that block of energy in your 12th house which is very Sagittarian. This is a great opportunity to learn new things or absorb new knowledge about understanding some of your responses, some of your fears, some of your insecurities, but also becoming more conscious who's not good for you in terms of your daily retinue. And that's the interesting paradox of this particular event for you. However, once Jupiter gets into Aries once more on the 20th of December, great for getting together with the folks or your extended family, and right through till the middle of May, because Jupiter in the fourth house can see you really finalising some physical changes to your property, moving all together, adding to your family, can be some good news with someone connected to you through your family. So Jupiter can work its magic through Aries for you for the first 5.5 months of 2023 for sure. Which brings us to Aquarius. Well, Aquarius, Jupiter going direct in your second house can, if we isolate it, be very positive for finance. And also because you have the collective in the sign of Sagittarius, the 11th house for you, that's very much in keeping with your energies. And there are commonalities between Aquarius and Sagittarius. You both like freedom, you both like space, both can be quite progressive. So I feel that as long as you don't set your expectations too high, something could come in over the next month through to the 20th of December, which really is quite exciting and pushes back on how it feels for other people collectively. You know, we're all having to readjust to the cost of things. Commodity prices are higher world over, and we wish it wasn't like that. That is the reality. However, for you, there could be that snippet or some strand of good fortune. But I think the chances are it's been something you've been working on for a very long time. It could be to do with your ideas, and it could be to do with your self-expression. And once Jupiter returns to Aries from the 20th of December through to mid-May, your way of expressing yourself is really going to be lightened up, because your two rulers have been in this mortal combat for 2 years. It's been really tough for Aquarius people, particularly if you have personal planets very close to where Saturn and Uranus have been active in your natal horoscope. So I think some good news can come through. If you do have some surprises when it comes to your financial situation, could be linked to a bit of a flutter with a group, to be honest. If something does happen, you have a slice of fortune, I think you're going to want to be very generous about it to others, which is really lovely. And one of the things I feel you will do is look out for those who are less fortunate if you can possibly squeeze it from your budget, which is admirable. Which brings us to Pisces, definitely not least, but is last, because the 12th zodiac sign. But of course, Jupiter is your ruler. So going direct is something to really savour. This is going to bring an extra spark of vitality, of enterprise, of trying to get things moving that are important to you. Maybe something's been a bit stuck over the last couple of years, because however much Jupiter has gone through your sign last year, from the middle of May to the end of July, and then from the end of 2021 through to when it went into Aries and then into the retrograde, something you tried to do may have sort of taken 1 or 2 steps forwards, but 1 or 2 back, it may have seemed. And part of the reason for that is that Saturn's been in your 12th house. An inhibition to your confidence, your vitality, your self-worth potentially. A lot of psychological stuff may have seen you not quite be in the mood to seize the moment, with Uranus in a very enterprising part of your scope. So stress and tension for everyone has been an issue. So Jupiter going direct in your sign is wonderful. But when it moves into Aries on the 20th of December, it's going to be in your second solar house through to the middle of May, and it won't be going through a retrograde. It is going to come out of a shadow. I'll just find my notes. So the post-shadow period ends on the 14th of February. So from the 14th of February onwards, definitely, I feel that something that you've worked upon tirelessly but has not quite gained the traction you would like could really pay back to you in quite a significant way from the middle of February through to the middle of May. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me for this Jupiter presentation of Jupiter direct in Pisces, and then moving into Aries on the 20th of December through till the time it goes into Taurus on the 16th of May.